When my wife of 17 years decided to leave me for some guy she met online, moved to some little ass town in Tennessee to be with him, and laughingly threw divorce papers in my face when she left, I thought my life was over. Now, during the divorce hearings, which my ex-wife, had to drive back from Tennessee to attend, the topic of alimony came up. At that time, I only made a little over $1,200 a month after taxes as a janitor baggage handler at the local airport in town. It was a really small airport. It was just me and another guy, as well as the owner that worked there at the time. Actually, it was categorized by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, as a basic airport. We just called it local. Anyway, we housed small propeller planes, crop dusters, personal planes, things like that. The terminal was actually a double-wide trailer. Well, a modular home, if you want to be politically correct, which I don't. I haven't been politically correct my whole life. I'm not about to start now. It was a 3-bedroom trailer. One room was Mr. Reynolds' office. The second room was for storage. And the third, well, it didn't have a purpose. It was completely empty. The waiting area would have been the living room. The kitchen was a little snack and drink station. And, of course, there was the bathroom. Now, back to the divorce hearings. Wouldn't you know it, my wife, or ex-wife, was kind enough to take half of that $1,200 for alimony, claiming she was single and unable to work to support herself due to IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. She was lying, but the judge believed her anyway. The court system in this country is messed up. Now, after the divorce was finalized, I had to move out of the house that we were renting, simply because without having another income coming in, I couldn't afford it anymore. The rent alone was $850. That was more than I even brought home in a month after the alimony payment. I left almost everything behind. Most of it was hers anyway, and I sure as hell didn't want it. I packed an old duffel bag with my work uniforms, a couple of pairs of socks and underwear, some t-shirts, a couple pairs of jeans, as well as my phone charger, my toothbrush, toothpaste, razor, and shaving cream. I put all my CDs and my DVDs and the DVD player in a large Scott's paper towel box that I got from the creepy old grocery store in town. I then threw the duffel bag in the trunk, gently placed the box in the front seat of my car. After I moved out, I slept in the car for about a week or so in the parking lot of the airport, and then took an Amish bath in the bathroom every morning. Don't judge. The morning after the last night I slept in my car, which was a Friday morning, I was mopping the floor in the waiting area when the owner of the airport, Mr. Reynolds, came up to me. Mr. Reynolds is an older gentleman, mid to late 60s, married with 3 grown children, and a really nice guy. He's the reason I stayed working here. Anyway, he came up to me and said, "Hey, Richie." That's my name, Richie. Well, Ernest Richundo, really, but I don't like people calling me Ernest. It reminds me of all those Hey Vern commercials back in the 80s. The Jim Varney character, Ernest P. Worrell. I forgot the company that they were for even. Anyway, I love the Ernest movies. Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Scared Straight, Slam Dunk Ernest, just to name a few. They're all hilarious. I have them all on DVD. Now, like I was saying, the owner walked up to me and said, "Hey, Richie, I know it's none of my business. I'm just worried about you, son. But were you sleeping in your car this morning when I came in?" I was a little embarrassed to answer, but I finally did. "Yes, sir," I said, and hung my head, feeling small. He just stood there. "It's a long story, sir," I said, still hanging my head. "Come back to my office, Richie. Let's talk about it, if you don't mind." "The floor can wait," he said, I told you he was a nice guy. Anyway, I put the mop in the bucket, pushed it over in the corner, and then followed him back to his office. He opened the door, walked in, and said, "Have a seat, Richie." So I did. That was the first time that I had ever been in his office. It was your normal, outdated office. There was a huge gray metal desk in the middle of the room with My Little Pony stickers on the front of it. I don't want to know why those were there. On top of his desk sat an old Radio Shack TRS-80 computer on the front right corner, a framed picture of his wife and kids next to it, a desktop calendar in the middle, a coffee cup with pins in it, and a microcom radio. At least that's what I call it. I'm sure there's a real name for it, I just don't know what it is. It's basically a high-frequency radio used to communicate between the planes and the terminal. There were 3 file cabinets in the right corner of the room, with a coffee pot on top of the first one, a file sorter full of files on top of the second one, and a small oscillating fan on top of the third, tan carpet on the floor, wood paneling on the walls, and white hard foam ceiling like you'd see in any mobile home. A large fake plastic plant sat in the left corner of the room with an 8x10 picture of vintage airplanes on the wall surrounding it, as well as a large picture window directly behind the desk, giving a clear view of the only runway. Anyway, he sat down in his big brown leather chair, cupped his hands together, leaned forward on his desk, and said, "I can see you're upset. I don't mean to pry, but what's going on?" I took a deep breath, let it out, and replied, "Well, sir, my wife left me, took half of my check for alimony. I can't afford a place to live anymore, so I've been sleeping in my car, sir." He just looked at me with an "oh my God" look on his face. He then sat back in his chair. "Richie," he said, "how long have you been working here?" "Over 15 years, sir," I replied. 15 years. That's a long time, even longer than I've been here. You've never complained about anything. You never call out. You do everything I ask. In my book, that grants you a little privilege," he said. "Privilege, sir?" I questioned. "Now, it's not much, but it's better than your car," he said. "There's an old tool shed out back that the groundkeepers used to use. It's a pretty good size. It's got electric and linoleum floor. There may still be some old tools in there, but that's about it. I think there's a folding cot out there as well. If not, I'll find you one." Why would there be a folding cot in a tool shed? I thought. "Anyway, it's all yours for as long as you need it, a week, a month, a year, 10 years even, if you want it, that is," he finished saying. "Oh, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. That back seat is killing my back," I replied excitedly. "Come on, I'll show you where it is," he said, standing up and motioning for me to come with him. As I got up, the microcom began to make a loud, sharp, staticky sound a few times, then stopped. It scared the crap out of me. I jumped. "It does that sometimes," Mr. Reynolds said dismissively. "Come on." I just stared at the microcom with a "what the hell" look on my face. After a few seconds, I snapped back to reality. With all my years working here, I've never seen a tool shed out back, I thought. We walked out of the office, out of the back door, down the steps, and towards the runway. After about 10 minutes of walking, I saw it. Now, when you think of the words tool and shed, you think of a small 4-foot by 7-foot structure, right? Well, this thing was almost as big as the terminal. It was 8 feet in width and 17 feet in length, and yes, I measured it. It was huge, as far as tool sheds go, that is. It had wood paneling all the way around it. Not that mobile home paneling that was in Mr. Reynolds' office, no, that unfinished wood paneling that you get like at Lowe's. Anyway, someone had painted it white and trimmed it with 1x4s painted black. The doors were the same way. It was really sharp looking. There were two small windows with sliding panels, so you could open them on either side of the doors, which were directly in the middle of the front of it and opened outward to either side. There were two more windows, one on each side of the shed and two more in the back. And get this, it actually had a real roof. It was a peaked roof with real roof shingles like you see on an actual house. Now, I had actually seen this thing before. I didn't think it was a tool shed. I thought it was one of those little houses that you see on TV, that someone was actually living in. It was that nice. "Here you go, Richie. It's all yours," Mr. Reynolds said, patting me on the back. "Go ahead, check it out." I opened the doors to see that the interior of the shed was completely drywalled and painted white. Even the ceiling with several electric wall sockets on the bottom of each wall. There was an old rusty saw, an 8-foot ladder, and a few sawhorses in the back right corner. And yes, there was a small folding cot leaned up against the wall in the front left corner. "Oh my God," I said, completely amazed. "It's like a studio apartment." "How much do you want for it, sir?" I asked. "Not a thing," he replied. "Like I said, it's all yours, and take the rest of the day off and the weekend off, with pay, of course. You've had a rough time lately. Get some rest. I'll see you on Monday." Really, really nice guy. "Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. I've got a little bit of money on me. I'm going to run to Wally World and get some sheets and pillows, sir. Thanks again," I said excitedly. "I'll walk back with you," he said, as he turned around and began to walk towards the terminal. I followed closely behind. We said our goodbyes as he walked to the terminal and I continued to the parking lot. I got in my car and went to Wally World, got some twin sheets, a pillow, and a pillowcase, like I said, and then made an unplanned stop at my old house. Technically, the month wasn't over yet, and I was paid up until the 1st. So legally, it was still my house. Anyway, I walked in, I grabbed the TV, the coffee pot, all the fixings, a few gallons of spring water, the microwave, some food, the mini fridge we kept in the bedroom, my dresser, a blanket, and a little blue table that sat in the hallway. It was my ex-wife's, but screw it. I needed a table, as well as the dolly that was in the laundry room that I used to move my dresser. How did it all fit in my car, you ask? Well, my car was actually a '98 Chevy Blazer, so that's how. Anyway, I got back to the airport, unloaded the car, and put it all in my new place, including my box of DVDs and stuff. Now, pulling the dolly across the grass while walking backwards and trying not to drop the dresser was fun. That's a joke, by the way. Anyway, I arranged everything the way I wanted it. I unfolded the cot, put the sheets on, the pillowcases, hooked the DVD player up to the TV, and laid in the cot and watched a marathon of Ernest movies, thinking, I have everything I need right here in this shed. Well, except for a bathroom, but luckily there was one of those porta potty things close by. I don't know why it was out there, but I was sure glad that it was, especially in the mornings. Wow, holy crap, have I been blabbing on for too long? Let me get down to the story. Now, I laid around all weekend watching movies, old TV shows I recorded, drinking coffee, and eating on occasion. I called Mr. Reynolds on Saturday to get my schedule, and he had me on all 5 nights, Monday through Friday. I didn't really care. The night shift is easy. There's no one else there. You got to clean up, turn on the runway lights, listen for the pilots to call in, and assist them if needed. Easy, right? You see, I don't care when I work, just as long as I work. Now, I walked to the terminal Monday afternoon, a little before 3. I punched in and went to work, said hi and bye to the other guy. I think his name is Dave or something. I got my instructions for the night from Mr. Reynolds and said bye to him as well. You see, the terminal is closed between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. If you fly out or in during those times, you're on your own. Anyway, the night was going good. I turned on the runway lights at about 7 o'clock. No planes had come in and none had flew out. I was clearing up Mr. Reynolds' office per his request when it happened. It was about 9:30 at the time. The overhead light in the office dimmed just a little and then came back to normal. Power surge, I thought, and just blew it off. Seconds later, the microcom began to make another loud, sharp, staticky sound. This time it didn't stop. No, it continued. I walked over to the desk and just stared at it. What in the hell? I said to myself. I then began to hear very low screams coming from within the static, not over the static, in the static. I had never heard anything like that before. It was quite unnerving. The volume of the screams grew louder with every passing second until they were almost at a fever pitch. I covered my ears and screamed, "Stop!" as loud as I could. Then it just stopped. I removed my hands from my ears. Dead silence. What in the hell just happened? I thought, starting to get concerned. Okay, it's a glitch. It's old equipment. There's a cross wire somewhere, I said to myself, trying to rationalize what just had happened. I took a deep breath, let it out, and continued cleaning the office. Still a little freaked out. I began singing to myself to try and calm my nerves. I forgot what song I was singing. Well, it really doesn't matter. Anyway, as I was really getting into it, the microcom started up again. There was a loud popping sound, then the overhead lights began to flicker like a strobe on steroids. Mayday, 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 I'm declaring an emergency. Clear your runway. Now, I'm coming in. A very intense male voice said into the microcom. I quickly looked out the window to see nothing but runway lights. No planes on approach, and none on the runway. What the hell? I thought. The overhead lights went out. The runway lights went out as well. I was standing there in complete darkness. I screamed, pulled my phone out of my pocket, turned on the flashlight, and quickly made my way to the door. Completely scared out of my mind, I was just about to grab the knob when I turned back for some reason, just as this incredibly bright white light filled the entire room. I threw myself back against the door, closing my eyes, covering them with both of my hands, and falling down into a sitting position. Now, we've all had bright lights shined in our eyes a few times in our lives, right? We cover our eyes and could always tell when the light was gone, even with your eyes completely covered, right? Well, I sat there with my eyes completely covered for a good 2 minutes. Then the lights were gone. I uncovered my eyes and opened them. The overhead light was back on in the office. Now, what I saw standing there behind the desk was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was what I could only describe as not of this planet. It had pale gray skin. It was tall, extremely tall, so tall that it had to lean over so it could fit in this 8-foot-high room. It was quite menacing. It was completely bald, with 2 big bulging jet black eyes that didn't blink. There were 2 small holes where a nose should have been, with no mouth, no ears. Its neck was about 2 feet long, and some kind of knob or button on the right side of it. It was extremely skinny, with legs about 6 feet long, and arms about 6 feet long as well. It had elongated fingers, and I couldn't see its toes. It was behind the desk. It had what looked to be two small speakers side by side in the middle of its chest, with a red indicator light under the speaker on the left and a green indicator light under the speaker on the right. I was completely, absolutely, utterly horrified. I screamed repeatedly, fearing for my life. "Don't kill me! Please don't kill me!" I screamed. That thing then tilted its head to the side and began to speak as the red light began to flash. Now, the language that it spoke sounded like a cat coughing up a hairball. I stopped screaming and listened to it. A sense of calmness fell over me as I rose to my feet and stood there, staring at this thing as it stared back at me, still speaking. It stopped speaking and just stared at me. "I can't understand you," I said calmly. It then reached up with its right hand and pressed the button on its neck. Another staticky sound came from its chest, and then it began to speak. This time, I understood every word. "Greetings, Earthling. My name is..." something I couldn't understand and can't pronounce. "I'm the ruler of the planet Zimfar. I come in peace. I wish you no harm, but make no mistake, I will kill you if I have to," it said. "What do you want?" I asked. "I and the beings of my planet seek refuge here on Earth." "Refuge from what?" Now, never in my life did I ever imagine that I would be having an intelligent conversation with an extraterrestrial being. But it was happening. "From annihilation. My planet has come under attack by those seeking to take only resources my planet has. Water. So you all want to come here. Nearly 75% of planet Earth is covered in water, and since I and the beings of my planet are made up of water, we will most certainly survive here. So you're going to kill everyone on this planet and take it over? That is not our intention. We are civilized beings that intend to live among the people of your planet." "How?" "We are far more advanced than any human here on Earth. We possess the power to alter our appearance. We can make ourselves look just like you Earthlings." As I stood there, I watched as whatever its name was shifted into what I could only describe as a human man, fully dressed and wearing glasses. He even waved at me. "How in the hell," I began to say as it shifted back. "Oh, that is cool," I stated. "If you will allow myself and the beings of my planet to come to Earth using this portal and live amongst you humans, saving the entire population of my planet, I will grant you the ability to achieve all your desires, however big or small they may be." I thought about it for a while and then said, "Hell yeah, I'll do it, but you can only come at night. No one will see you then." "Agreed," it replied. It then extended its right arm, extending its fingers as well, and slowly moved it towards me. "I thought we made a deal," I screamed as the fingers touched my chest and then withdrew. I stood there trembling uncontrollably. "Make a wish," it said. I slowly stopped trembling and said, "I want a cup of coffee." I blinked my eyes, and when I opened them again, there was a cup of fresh brewed hot coffee with cream and sugar sitting in an all-white coffee cup on the edge of Mr. Reynolds' desk. I was completely ecstatic. I picked it up and took a drink. It was the best tasting coffee I ever had. Satisfied? It said. Uh-huh, I replied, whatever its name was, then shifted back into that man and looked out of the office window. I went and stood beside him. As I looked out the window, I saw that the runway lights were back on. I also saw hundreds, if not thousands, of people walking down the runway and heading toward the terminal. There were men, women, teenagers, and young children, as well as older men and women, all dressed differently and from different ethnic backgrounds. Are they all from your planet? I asked. They most certainly are. They have all adapted physical traits that will help them blend in amongst most of the people of your planet. Thank you, my friend, he said sincerely, putting his left hand on my left shoulder and extending his right hand to me. I then shook hands with him. This is merely a fraction of the beings on my planet. It will take several months, even years, human time, that is, for all of them to arrive. I trust you will be here to assist them with that? Oh, I certainly will, I replied. All the people then walked past the window, some waving, some not, and then just disappeared. Where'd they go? I asked. To different parts of your planet, he replied. Thank you again, my friend. And then he disappeared himself. I just stood there. What in the hell just happened? I thought. I then looked at the coffee cup on the desk and smiled. I finished my shift, locked up, and went back to my shed. I had the best night's sleep that I'd had in a long time. I got up the next morning, and just for shits and giggles, I wished for a 1957 Chevy. I walked out to the parking lot, and there it was, right where my Blazer was parked. Now, to make an incredibly long story short, I went to work that night and didn't say anything to Mr. Reynolds or to Dave, and the same thing happened that night at the same time. Well, except the Mayday call. I don't know what that was about. Anyway, it happened again on Wednesday night and then Thursday night. Friday morning, I went to Mr. Reynolds and asked him to put me on the night shift 7 days a week for straight pay, of course. He was a little confused, but agreed. He cut my hours back from 3 to 11 to 5:30 till 11. I was fine with that. As time went on, I used my new gift to get things for myself and to help a few people out. Since Mr. Reynolds was so nice to me, I figured it was about time that he retired and spent his remaining years with his wife and family. I wished for $1 million in a brown duffel bag and got it, carried it to his office, and made him a deal that he couldn't refuse. $1 million cash to sell me the airport. He didn't even hesitate or even question where I got the money from. He just opened the top left drawer of his desk, pulled out the deed, signed it, grabbed the bag, and left. He sends me a family photo postcard from different parts of the globe every now and then. I hope he's happy. The new arrivals come every single night now, and have been for quite some time. Anyway, I shut down the airport as a business, that is, so I could focus on helping my new friends. I gave Dave $100,000 when I did, and wished him the best. Come to find out, his real name is Earl. I always thought it was Dave. Anyway, I moved out of the shed and into the terminal. Well, what was the terminal. I fully furnished it by using my gift. I put a few more sheds out back, 17 to be exact. I had them built just like the first one. I used them for any of the arrivals that wanted to stay in town. It looks like a little housing development out there. Now, I don't know how many people I've let come to this planet. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands, and they all look like us. Maybe your new coworker is one of them. Maybe the old lady standing behind you at the grocery store. Maybe the guy or girl you took home from the bar last night. Who knows? I can't tell. Now, remember when I said that I thought my life was over when my ex-wife left me? Oh, I was wrong. My life has a new purpose, helping others. Oh, yeah, speaking of my ex-wife, she called me a couple of days ago and said that the guy she left me for had left her for some 20-year-old blonde bimbo, and that she was recently diagnosed with severe irritable bowel syndrome, for real this time. Then she started crying and asked if she could come home. I hung up on her. What? I had nothing to do with that, I swear. You believe me, right?